Librarians across the country last year saw twice as many book challenges to what was on their shelves, and now they're over it.
It's just very discouraging, I think.
Stupid and frustrating.
It's a challenge, but we're going to come ahead. We're going to win.
They've been fired, called derogatory names, and even threatened with arrest just for doing their jobs of putting books on shelves. Over the last few years, the American Library Association has seen a rising tide in the calls for censorship at libraries. 2023 saw the largest number of book challenges on record.
We're seeing demands to remove books in blue states. We're seeing it in red states. We're seeing it everywhere.
In response, Deborah Caldwell Stone with the ALA says they've created a program called Unite Against Book Bans to help local communities support their librarians. Book challenges have increased as libraries become another touch point for this latest culture war. During the pandemic, conservative groups mobilized around censoring works they found inappropriate for children.
In my opinion, there shouldn't be any sex books in our library. If you continue to let these books be on your shelf, I hope and pray that it is not your child or your grandchild that gets kidnapped and used towards the sex slavery.
In fact, a great deal of the rhetoric about book banning right now is built around this falsehood that books touching on sex or gender identity, sexual orientation, or deal with what's called critical race theory are legally harmful to minors.
With book challenges come challenges to the librarians themselves. Patty Hector, Suzette Baker, and Terry Leslie were fired after refusing to move books or take them out of the collection entirely.
I loved what I was doing. I was doing a good job, but, it was politics. And I was informed that I would be fired.
Well, I made the mistake of going on television and saying, no, I'm not going to remove those books.
I spoke out and said, this is censorship. We can't do this. This is not right. It is not something that we can have happening in our community. And I was subsequently fired.
I loved that job. I loved the teens that I worked with.
Brookie Parks is one of several librarians who sued their former employer. She was fired in 2021.
It was devastating as well. And it just turned into basically a 2-year nightmare.
Parks said she was asked to cancel programs for teens solely based on their topics about LGBTQ and race. She reached a $250,000 settlement that also stipulates future library programs must be inclusive and diverse.
Teens need those programs. And I just felt like if it costs me losing my job or even losing my house, it's worth standing up for and fighting for. And I know at the end of the day, I will be able to lay my head down and sleep at night.
Another librarian that was fired is running for a political office. Caldwell Stone with the ALA explains why that matters.
Elected officials can have an enormous impact on a library. When library boards are appointed, they can appoint partisans or persons with a particular agenda who are not interested in operating the library as a community resource.
Patty Hector is running for a seat on the Saline County Quorum Court in Arkansas. It's a political office similar to County Board Supervisor, where an organized group called for books to be removed last year.
I have personally looked at some of these books and read them, and I was disgusted.
Did you ever think you'd be a politician?
No, don't like politics, don't want to do this, but I've got name recognition. I would have retired by now, but no. I'm not going to let them do this to our library, and we will fight them tooth and nail if they try to take their funding away.
In Wyoming, Terry Leslie spoke up at public meetings where locals called for her resignation and county officials tried to take away part of her library's funding.
I pointed to our collection development policy and invited people who did not like the books that we had to go through our challenge process.
More than 50 book challenges flooded in just a few months.
I never had a challenge hit my desk until this started. And then when they came fast.
Everyone should have a right to raise a concern about a book.
But Caldwell Stone says this is not typically done in mass and in public, like many of the recent book challenges librarians are facing.
People would show up at board meetings, read spicy excerpts from books, and there would be no countervailing voice to point out that that was one paragraph in a 300-page, award-winning novel.
And she says just because one community member does not like a certain book does not mean that book can or should be taken off the shelf, with exceptions for legally obscene material. Most books being challenged are not considered legally obscene. Caldwell Stone explains.
They are protected speech. They may not be to a person's taste, and they're in the library because someone in the community wants to read it. And that's actually the criteria the court uses.
Like the other fired librarians we spoke with, Suzette Baker in Texas says most challenge books are protected under the First Amendment.
Libraries are neutral space, and they should be protected as that neutral space. There's no protections for them.
She was fired from her position after she refused to put a third edition of Critical Race Theory behind the library counter where patrons couldn't find it unless they asked for it.
This was never about the books. The books that they gave me to get rid of were books on racism. They were books on transgender and sexual orientation and questioning for teens. We need a free library, a library that reflects the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's got to be there because we have to know.
Not everyone in her community agrees.
If that is the only way that we can keep this pornography, these inappropriate books out of the hands of our children, then the library needs to close.
Every librarian I spoke to for this story says when books, libraries, and staff are challenged, members of the communities should speak up, either by working with other community members or contacting local politicians.
Librarians need to stand up, but if our community doesn't stand up behind us, one person can't make this change. The entire community is going to have to come together with the librarians in order to stop this.
A community, they say, who values a public resource like the library. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Casey Kuhn.